There's a courage that came from my vulnerability. If anything, I learned how to steer into the skid. A quote from Kamo Lefenya from episode 17 of season 1, where we were talking around friendships and if men can win at friendships. And so today's conversation, I want to just speak around vulnerability and trying to answer the question, is the lack of vulnerability the cause of superficial relationships among men? So just to share a bit of a story on my side, I remember I believe it was 2019. Yes, 2019. I was doing my second and third year. If you know, as a student, how course chows sometimes. So I'm doing my second and third year in that particular year, 2019. And a tragedy struck. My father was in a car accident. And so it wasn't so much finding out that it was in a car accident, but it was the manner in which I found out. So it turns out that my parents decided to keep it from me and not tell me about the accident because they thought it was going to distract me from my studies. And at that time, I was approaching the mid-year exams. And so when the incident actually occurred, they chose and they thought it was better that I didn't know at the time. Unfortunately, I was part of a family group on WhatsApp. So on this random day, and I think it was honestly God intervening in this time, because that particular family group, it was a group chat where I didn't really participate and I didn't really read messages and anything like that. Like, I would just mark it as read, I wouldn't really follow what is happening on the group and when people send messages, I kind of treated it like spam. So, but on this day, for some reason, I was like, let me open, there's a message, let me open it and see what it's saying. And I opened the message and it was something along the lines, my aunt had shared the news with the rest of the family and was just saying, may God have mercy on us, may there be healing for our brother. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? And then I scroll up, and then I see the message where the family is being notified that an accident has occurred. Our brother is currently in hospital. And they're referring to my dad. And I'm like, wait, what? And I look at the dates. If I'm not mistaken, I think that message had been sent 2 days prior. And I'm like, did my dad just get into an accident? Wait, what's going on? I was puzzled. So I call my mom. Immediately I call my mom and I'm like, hey, how are you doing? And she's being quite chilled. Yeah, I'm good. How are you doing? I'm all right. How's dad? Dad's fine. I'm like, Mom, I just heard this. What's going on? And then she's like, okay, cat's out of the bag. And she's like, yeah, this happened, but he is okay. We didn't want to tell you because, there's exams coming up. We don't want you to be distracted. And, I was upset because I'm like, man, this is my dad, and all of that. And so I check in on him immediately as well. And he's saying he's doing okay. He's at hospital. By the grace of God, he wasn't very severely injured. There was just like maybe, I think, some strain to his neck. So he had a little neck brace for some time and little scratches. But I remember my mom, if it was not my dad, sending me the picture of the vehicle, the accident. I couldn't even make what model vehicle it was. It was so badly damaged. I had to ask my dad, what car is this? And he's like, oh, it's a Polo Vivo. So just some context, he was on a work trip and he was using a car hire. And so with that car hire was the car that he was involved in an accident with. Luckily, it was a single car accident. He had just lost control of the car. He was driving on a dirt road. No other vehicles were involved. No other individuals were injured. He was the only person in the car. He was driving at night. So thank God for that. And also, he was not severely injured. But I looked at the damage of the car, and the car was on its roof when I saw the picture. And I'm like, looking at the car and looking at you, how do you not look worse? But I was pretty shaken in that moment. I was pretty shaken at the news of what just happened. And so I told, my community, I told some friends around me, and I remember sharing it with one of my good friends, and they immediately, we were students at the time, and so we were living in Bram, and so he was like a walking distance away, and immediately was like, hey, I'm coming through, hey, I'm outside. And went down. He was like, hey, let's take a walk. Went, got some ice cream at KFC, just sat, spoke a bit. And in that moment, I just felt the comfort and the presence of my friends, my community. But then I realized that that would have not been the case had I not shared and said, "Hey guys, this just happened in my life, and I'm pretty shaken by it." So, in sharing this, what is something that I want us to understand and learn from it? Before I go into that, I just want to read a scripture that is found in Proverbs 17. It says that a loyal friend is always loyal, and a brother is born to help in time of need. This is Proverbs 17, verse 17. And two things that I just want us to learn in this area and this topic for today. Firstly, we can't all be the heroes and saviors in our friendships. This one, I believe, is quite the issue when it comes to male friendships. As gents, we're problem solvers by nature, and we find fulfillment in, finding a solution to a problem. That is just inherently how we are wired as gents. But with that in mind as well, understand that when it comes to this realm of friendships, if you are going to want to always be the guy with the answers, you always want to be the guy with the solutions, you always want to be the guy who is able to show up, who's able to help out, who's able to, provide the aid when aid is needed. You always want to be that guy. Firstly, you're not being authentic in that relationship because we understand that life happens to everyone. The person who's top, at some stage he'll be down if he wasn't already down at some point. And the person who's down someday might be top if they haven't already been top and now they're down. It rains for everyone and the sun shines for everyone. Like, everyone goes through seasons, everyone goes through highs and lows. So one, you're not being an authentic person in your friendship. If you're always the savior, you're always the one with solutions, you're always the one who's helping out and who can provide help and who's bringing the advice, who's bringing the comforts, you're always that guy. When you're always grand, I don't buy it for a moment, right? So firstly, that is not really authentic of you. You are not doing justice to the friendship because you are not showing up as yourself. You are constantly showing up the way you perceive or think that you're supposed to be showing up for other people. So that is the first part. And again, it's an issue of not being vulnerable. It's an issue of us not wanting to express any kind of vulnerability in our relationships. And so, we can never always just be the heroes and saviors in our friendships. Secondly, you're doing a disservice to your friendship by doing this because it is a fact. You are gonna go through a down season in your life at some point, and you say you are part of a brotherhood, you have friends, or you have a best friend, but that friend has never been able to be there for you in any bad season that you're in because they just have never known you to be in a bad season. And so you are robbing the person who says they are your community, they are part of your life. You're robbing them of an opportunity of showing up for you when it's needed and when it matters. And that's also an injustice because you, as friends, and another area that is actually fulfilling in friendships is being able to be there for a friend in a time of need, in a crisis, in a bad season, in a time of grief and mourning and pain and loss and suffering. It is a source, a sense of also fulfillment. It feeds in the friendship as well. That, man, I can cry at my friend. Man, I can be there in the tough times. So it's very important that we recognize, and we need to start accepting this, especially as men. We can't always be the savior. We can't always be the hero in our friendships. There's going to be times where it needs to be reciprocated the other way. But that's only possible when we can let our walls down and we can actually express some form of vulnerability as men. Right? That's the first thing. The second thing I want us to take away from this is that in a true friendship, you will not feel less than after displaying vulnerability. What do I mean by this? You might be listening to this, and you might be saying, well, there was a time where for example, I was running really empty in terms of funds. It was a very hard month financially. My electricity was low. I was struggling to get through the month in terms of transport. And so I reached out to a friend, and they kind of hung that over my head, or they kind of reminded me later on in friendship that I was there for you when you needed something. And so they made me feel like I was quite inferior because I was struggling, and in my time of need when I reached out, they kind of weaponized that. And unfortunately, that may be the truth for some of us, right? But what I'm saying, and what I mean by making this point, is that a true friendship, good and healthy friendships, this will not be the case. In good and healthy friendships, when someone is vulnerable, when someone shares something of a vulnerable nature, hey, I'm struggling in my marriage. Hey, I'm struggling I'm not connecting with my kid. I feel like I'm failing as a father. At work, I've been slacking, and I'm now being called into meetings. I've been given a warning. It's not later weaponized. It's not later brought up to you. Like when you share this in the space, there's safety in the friendship when you actually share that, man, I'm going through some difficult season with my partner, and they were sharing that they feel like I'm not really present, and it's making me feel down. There's safety when that's shared in a good friendship. You don't walk away from that feeling less than. If anything, you walk away feeling empowered, because then life is spoken into that situation. There's encouragement in that space. They maybe come and rally around you to see how they can help in a practical and tangible way, rather than making you feel like feeling very devalued, feeling less than, feeling like you're worthless, feeling like you deserve to be in this predicament that you find yourself in. That is not what it should look like if you are in a healthy relationship. And so I would actually even go as far as saying, if you experience that in a friendship, and you actually experience it repeatedly in for different scenarios, that is a flag that's probably not a healthy relationship for you to be in the first place. So I would go as far as to say that just might be a flag to say, whoop, let's just stop and pause and reevaluate. Is this a friendship that I want to continue in? And so a principle, as I always leave us with some principles that I've been applying in my life, and that I would just present to you to consider, and maybe also apply in your life if you're not already doing so. And I have two today. And the first is lead and they will follow. Lead and they will follow. I have seen this in my life and in my friendships. Oftentimes when there's certain things that I would like to see in my friendships that maybe I'm not seeing at the time, that I want us to develop in the friendship, it starts with me. I just take the first plunge. I go for it, and I'm like, let me be the example. Let me set the tone of what I'd like to see, and let me see if it catches on. Like, for example, I recently remember a friend of mine just complimented me and thanked me just about a month ago, and they were saying like, hey, thank you so much for being so intentional with setting up these catch-ups. You would have remembered, I think, in some of my previous one of the previous episodes, I shared about how when it comes to friendships, I'm quite intentional, because I realize how much time and intentionality is required in friendships the older we get. When we're kids, friendships are kind of organic and they centered around common things. We go to the same school, we live in the same neighborhood, that kind of stuff. But then when you're now older, you realize you need to be so much more intentional because now our schedules are different. We're probably working in different careers. We don't necessarily live in the same neighborhood. You live in that suburb, I live in that town. And so we need to be quite intentional if you're saying we're friends, right? And so my friendships, we're all in our working age. Some of us are married. Some of us have kids. We now need to be so intentional with actually scheduling. Hey, let's meet. We're going to go grab a coffee or we're going to go watch a game or we're going to go play some tennis, whatever. But let's schedule and find what time works. Oh, I have a meeting on this day or I'm traveling on this day. Okay, this time we book it in our calendars and then we meet on those days. And so I've kind of taken it in most of my friendship. I've kind of taken the initiative of being that person who schedules. And I'll remind, hey, it's been 3 weeks. Hey, it's been a month. Hey, let's meet up. Hey, let's find a date. Does this date work? Put it in the calendar and then we meet. And so this is what this friend was actually recognizing and saying, man, I appreciate this. And I took that initiative because I was like, hey, I would love it when people can just think of me, as you go on your day to day and you realize it's been a month and a half and oh man, I haven't spoken with him in a while. I haven't seen him in a while. And then you take that time when you pick up the phone, give me a call or text me and say, hey man, it'd be nice to meet up. It's been a while. And then we meet up. And I was like, okay, because I desire this, I'm not going to sit around and just hope that maybe one day one friend will just decide, hey, let me pick up the phone, let me text this guy, let me meet this guy, let me drive to where he is and let's grab a coffee and chat. So I took it upon myself to actually start doing this. And I've just been consistent with doing that. And I've actually started seeing it being reciprocated in some of the friendships, where now some individuals will just give me a random text. Hey, man, I was thinking about you. I hope you're good. Another person will be like, hey, man, it's been a while. Let's catch up, And I started seeing it being reciprocated. And so even in the space of vulnerability, sometimes it would take you taking that first step because here's the truth that we know as men. Men, we are naturally not inclined to being the most talkative and the most open and vulnerable, right? So if now you know for yourself, you have this awareness about your character, you have this awareness when it comes to vulnerability and that it's healthy and you desire it, especially in your friendships, hey, it's probably not as likely that your friends will actually start being vulnerable. So the fact that you actually have this awareness and you're like, oh man, I would like to introduce this in my friendship. Take the first step. Take the first step. And maybe you need to then be consistent and follow through. And at some point they might start catching on. It just reminds me of something that Kamo shared in this episode. You can check it out, episode 17. And he shared how when he came to Gauteng, he realized that gents didn't say, I love you. Right? And then he went on this experiment where he started just saying I love you to his friends, especially after a gathering. Maybe they were together and he's now leaving. He's like, okay, gents, I'm out. I'm going to see you. I love you, boys. And he became more frequent with it. He kept practicing it. At first, they were quite resistant and they were quite, just like, it shocked them up. It's like, hey, okay, because it's sometimes taboo in gents circles. But he kept being persistent on it until now they started accepting it. They started embracing it, and then they were reciprocating it, where he would say, hey guys, I'll see you next time. I love you. And like, I love you too, man. And then they're out. And so just that very example as well is what I'm talking about, where you can actually start on your side and start practicing it and being intentional with it, being repetitive with it. And something that is good, when they see that it is actually good, it will start reciprocating. That is the first principle that I'll leave you with. The second one is challenge your current mindset. What do I mean by this? I just said earlier that as the average man is not necessarily prone to speaking and being open and vulnerable. We normally characterized as the closed book. not necessarily showing emotion, not speaking so much about our emotions or what we're going through. And so, if we're gonna grow and be more healthy and be more available and be vulnerable in our friendships, in our brotherhoods, it's going to take a level of challenging our mindsets, because some of these things were narratives that were shaped over generations. Over generations, it was probably said that men don't cry. Over generations, it was probably, said that men are strong and men, keep things within, or whatever the case is. And so, if we're going to want to change for the better, grow in our thinking and how we relate as gents, how we relate in our friendships, then it's going to take a level of actually challenging these mindsets. I know I've had to challenge particular mindsets and the way I would think about certain things and how I viewed certain things. I remember I've shared it in one of the episodes in this podcast where I was quite homophobic. I remember being in a church service and the pastor was quoting a scripture where David kissed Jonathan. So if you're familiar with this story, David and Jonathan had such a close friendship, right? And when that was quoted, immediately in my mind, I said to myself, that's gay. And because I'm a person who is self-aware, almost immediately after thinking that like that, I asked myself, but why do I view this as gay? And that started a journey of me realizing that there's a mindset that I had adopted that was shaped by an environment, by certain people in my life, and just a narrative at the time when I was growing up that has now led me to think in this way. And then I realized to myself that I don't want to continue like this. And so I did something to be able to change that mindset, right? So if we're going to be growing in vulnerability, we're going to grow in how we relate with our brothers, how we relate in our friendships, we need to also challenge certain mindsets that we have. And so that is all I wanted to share with us in this episode. And I hope that there was something that was worth taking and maybe applying in your life, and just also seeing how you can grow and be better as a friend and just in your friendships in general. And so with that said, I hope that you are encouraged. And until the next episode, please remember that the man you're becoming is better than the man that you are today.